Before I talk about any more books, I need to talk about the fact that I have a problem. Hey guys, it's Amber. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are safe and healthy and staying home as much as you possibly can. While we're all physical distancing and staying home more and working from home, I've been really trying not to let bad habits form up again, i.e. I'm trying not to sit in front of my TV and be on my phone for 12 hours a day. Even as someone who loves reading so much, I think that when you're already distracted and there's a million things happening in the world, it's really easy to lean into things that are easier than reading, like scrolling through Instagram for 3 hours and wondering where your time went. And while I don't think we all need to be focusing on being productive or making the most of this quarantine time, I do think that, it's a good time to encourage your better habits. I am reaching for more books and less TV. I realize that what I really need right now are books that are just going to get me hooked from like page one. And kind of hopping all over my shelves, reading just like whatever I'm in the mood for. But today I wanted to recommend to you guys some books that I think are absolutely binge-worthy. When I think about book binges, the first thing that comes to mind are book series, just because it's easy to get invested in the first book and then keep going to the second or the third. And, usually that means it's going to be a fantasy or a sci-fi book, which is awesome. But I also have some books that are not quite series, but are more like companion books that are also just as bingeable for everyone, no matter what genre you're into. So let's get started. Alright, so judging by my shirt, I'm sure you could tell right away the first series that I was going to recommend was going to be Harry Potter. I know everyone is always saying reread Harry Potter or read Harry Potter, and you're sick of hearing it, but hear me out. The first 2 or 3 books in the series are not even classified as YA. They're classified as middle grade, which means that they are a little more simplistic in their problem solving and plot devices and really, really easy to breeze through. I'm pretty sure I've read the first book the most, and it's because you can read it in a couple of hours. They're pretty short. It's like 14.5, and this story just reminds you what it was like when things were easy. Even though Harry, Ron, and Hermione get into so many mishaps and are literally trying to save the world, they're doing it in an environment that's full of magic and amazing characters and crazy adventures, and it takes you back to being a kid, back when you were more hopeful and more easily optimistic, and you really thought that there were answers and possibilities to solve every problem. And I think right now we could all go to feel a little bit like that. So the first 3 books in the series are the easiest. I think the entire series is bingeable. My favorite book in the series is probably the 3rd for sentimental reasons, the 4th for plot reasons. So pick up Harry Potter. If you've never reread it since you've been a kid, this is a great time to reread it. I feel like I find something new in these books every time I reread them as an adult, and I hope you will too. Before I talk about any more books, I need to talk about the fact that I have a problem. A problem with book series. There are so many series, and I think I've mentioned this before, that I love, that I think are amazing, that are finished, that are fully published, that I have not read the last book in. I am notorious for not finishing a series because, one, I either love it so much I don't want it to be over. I do the same thing with TV shows. There are a lot of shows that have ended that I haven't watched the last episode of. Or I just never get to finish the series. So one thing I am hoping to do during this social isolation time is finish all the series I haven't finished. That being said, the next series I want to talk to you guys about is the Ruined series by Amy Tintera. There are 3 books in this series. It's a trilogy, and all the books are out. I'm pretty sure most of them are on Book Outlet the last time I checked too, if you want to try to find them at a discount. But of course, I have not read book 3. I will soon. But this series is so good and so bingeable. In the first book, we follow Emelina. She is a princess, a ruined princess. The ruined are like a magical class of people. They get these like ruined markings on their bodies, and they all have different powers in different like areas. So you can have like super strength, you can control weather, things like that. So she is one of the ruined princesses, and she's born with no magical ability. She gets married off to this prince, and it is like a whole adventure series. There's like action from chapter 1. She's like trying so hard to save her family and save her people, thinking the whole time that she has no magic to do it. It has all these doubts about herself because she knows that in everyone's eyes they're seen as useless. Her ultimate goal is to save her sister who's been kidnapped by the family that she's now fake marrying into. It's like a whole, there's a lot of drama in this book, but they're so good, and by the time you finish the first one, you're going to want to just run ahead and pick up the second one and be better than me and just start the third one after. We can start the third one together, but highly recommend this series. It's really well done and really easy to read if you're binging. Up next, a series that I have actually finished, and I'm actually missing a book because I loaned one to my sister, and that is the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy. If you've seen the movie and you love the movie but never read the books, you won't be spoiled. These books are so dense that the movie could not have captured everything that happens in just one film. I think they are making the rest of the books into movies as well, but I honestly loved the second and third book even more than the first, and I really liked the first. I think that the first book, because it is a lot of character introductions, takes a minute to get into, so give it like 50 to 100 pages, ease your way in, get to know the people, and by the time you finish you will be dying to pick up book 2. I love this series. For anyone who hasn't heard of it, I don't know how, because I feel like everyone was talking about it when the movie came out, but Crazy Rich Asians is about this couple. They are going to Singapore where Rachel, the girl in the couple, thinks that she's going to meet her boyfriend's family who lives in Singapore. She finds out when they're on their way to their trip that he's actually a member of one of the richest families in Asia, and then you follow all of their crazy family drama and sagas, and the other 2 books kind of dig deeper into the lives of certain characters. There's even more that happens. Like, this is a great series to binge. Up next, I want to talk about the Wayward Children series by Sean and McGuire. I have 4 books in the series so far. A 5th book did come out this January. I just haven't picked it up yet, but I have read all 4 that came out before this year. This series is so good, and all of the books are very short. They're all under 300 pages. They're basically little novellas. They follow kids who have gone to other worlds through magical doorways, so other worlds like Narnia, Wonderland, that kind of thing, and then they come back and they realize they just don't fit in anymore. They either have lived such a great life in their other world that they just want to get back there, or no one believes them that they went to these worlds and had these fantastic experiences. So they go to Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children, which is a school that is supposed to help them normalize their way back into society. Really, it's a school to help them either find their way back to their door or to help them accept the fact that they're not going to get to go back through that door again. So there are 5 books in the series. You can read these over a weekend because they're so short and so good. I think the second and the 4th book were probably my favorites, but they're all so good and so easy to read, even if you're not a big fantasy person, because I would say these books are more like magical than fantasy books. I think you would really like these because the characters are so diverse and dynamic and rich that you'll be into it. Alright, back to series that I have not finished. The Graceling trilogy by Kristen Cashore. I have read the first 2 books in the series, which are Graceling and Fire, and I still need to read Bitter Blue. It's funny, I posted Bitter Blue on my Instagram once, and an author that I really like told me, like, oh, you should read that sooner rather than later, and it's been months. In book 1, Graceling, we follow Katza, and she is graced. So basically, people who are graced have magical powers or ability that can take any form. Like, it can be really useful or it can be really unuseful. You can be graced at fishing, or you can be graced at murder, which is what Katza is graced with. The graced are definitely looked down upon based on what your grace is, and if your grace is really useful, you can be taken to live in the court of the king and basically like used to his whim. So this book, we follow Katza. She meets a prince. They have to go on like an adventure together, and they end up falling for each other, of course, because what's a fantasy without a little romance? But in Fire, book 2, we follow a character named Fire, and this is kind of set before Graceling. This is like a prelude to Graceling, and I guess Bitter Blue would have to be then after Graceling because we meet Bitter Blue in Graceling. But Fire is like the prelude to everything. We follow Fire. She is irresistible to people, so basically like men will see her and instantly be like drawn to her and like will risk it all for her kind of, and she hates that. She hates that she has this ability just to like stir things up when she's just here to like have a good time, you know? I loved Fire even more than I loved Graceling, and I really, really, really liked Graceling. So definitely recommend this series. Next is a series that if you've never read these books, you should, because you'll love it as much as you love the movie, and that is The Devil Wears Prada and then Revenge Wears Prada by Lauren Weisberger. The books are even better than the movie. I thought I had a copy of The Devil Wears Prada, but I guess I don't. But if you've already either watched the movie a million times or read that book a million times, pick up Revenge Wears Prada. It's like this, it's a sequel, but also kind of like a companion. So if you've never read The Devil Wears Prada, but you're familiar with the story or have seen the movie, you could definitely just read this on its own. This one follows Andy and Emily now that they're no longer working for Miranda, and it is so good. It's so fun. It's so easy. You could definitely pick both of those books up and just read them like back to back on your breaks between work, or if you're just taking your weekends off to be screen free. It's really, really fun. There's a lot of drama. The twist in this book, gold. Next, I want to talk about The Wrath and the Dawn and then The Rose and the Dagger, both by Renee Ahdieh. This is a duology. This story or series is a retelling of a Middle Eastern story called 1001 Nights. I believe it's 1001 Nights, where basically there is a girl who is in like the captivity of a prince, and he has this ritual of every day he like takes a new bride and then he kills her the following morning. So she is trying to avenge her best friend who was taken by the prince and then murdered by the prince. And so she volunteers to be one of his brides, knowing that's basically like a death sentence. So she goes to the palace, she's with him, and then she keeps herself alive by telling him stories. And he wants to hear how the story continues, so he lets her live another day. And then you learn more about their story and more about the prince's story and why he's doing this killing ritual to all these young women. And when I say, I remember when I first finished the first book, and I've never, like, I ran to Barnes & Noble like 2 minutes before it closed to get the second book, because I was like, I have to know what happened. There is a weird like magic system that is like quasi introduced in the second book that makes no sense, and you never get any answers about it. So I'm telling you that in advance so that you're not confused and wonder why I set you up for that. It's gonna happen. It's weird. We don't talk about it, but the books are great. It's so easy to binge these 2 books back to back too, and by the time you finished book 1, you will be dying for book 2. If you are into romance, I recommend binging all of these next 2 authors, but you can start with these: The Wedding Date and The Wedding Party by Jasmine Guillory. All of Jasmine Guillory's books have been really, really fun and good and easy to read. I love that they have these diverse groups of characters that seem very real. I remember being so annoyed with the characters in this book and so in love with the characters in this book, and you just end up wanting the best for them. And when there's that moment in all romance books where it's like there's a miscommunication or something happens where you think that it's not going to work out, even though you know because it's a romance novel it's going to work out. But Jasmine Guillory gets me every time, where I'm like, they might not be together, and every time it's like a whole emotional roller coaster. But in The Wedding Date, 2 people meet in an elevator, and the woman, Alexa, ends up asking Drew, the man she meets in the elevator, to be basically like her impromptu wedding date because she doesn't want to go to a wedding alone. And then they kind of, their lives intertwine. All the books are always set on the West Coast in the Bay Area. And in The Wedding Party, you meet 2 characters who we first are introduced to in The Wedding Date, and they are both in the same wedding for one of these characters. It's supposed to be hate to love, but I will say that I didn't love the hate to love. I didn't really buy the hate, but it's such a cute love story that I recommend reading both. The third book I cannot find. I know I have all of Jasmine Guillory's books. The third book that I really recommend that you read with these 2 is The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory, which I know I have somewhere, but I cannot find. But all of Jasmine Guillory's books are great, so very easy to binge all of her books in a weekend. Next, we have 3 books by Alexa Martin, which are all of her published books so far. I think she has another book coming out later this year, and those are Intercepted, Fumbled, and Blitzed. All of Alexa Martin's books follow couples where the male love interest is typically an athlete. They all kind of play for this one football team. So you do kind of see some of the characters pop up in other books, which I think is really fun. I think so far my favorite one has been Fumbled, which follows like a young woman, a single mom, who's just trying to like make the best of her life, do the best for her son, and she ends up meeting a football player, and their romance takes off from there. Intercepted kind of follows a similar formula. Marley gets dumped by her NFL boyfriend, is like off athletes forever, and then of course meets another athlete and falls for him, which is great. And then Blitzed I haven't read yet, and also haven't read the synopsis for yet because I don't want to ruin it for me. But I love Alexa Martin's writing. I think she's incredibly talented. She writes great stories, and these books are so good. Very good. Love her. And I decided to save my favorite author for last. If you followed me, you have heard me talk about this author. She is absolutely amazing at storytelling. And one thing that just as a writer I love and envy about her so much is her ability to write an amazing first line. Like, the opening chapter of all of her books will always just like suck you in. And anyone who can get you from line one can definitely keep you focused long enough to just binge a series. So she has a lot of books to pick from, but the two that I chose to talk about are the Villain series, which are Vicious and Vengeful. Just a duology, so again, not a ton of books to commit to, but so good and so bingeable. So we start with Vicious, which got a really pretty cover rechange, I think like 2 years ago. And there are two friends, Eli and Victor. They're best friends, they meet at college, and there's kind of always this like healthy competition between them. They discover in college that people who have near-death experiences often then recount having these like supernatural abilities, like extra power or strength or things like that. And they're working on their college thesis to prove that point, that a near-death experience is somehow tied to supernatural powers. But then their experiment goes a little bit beyond a research paper, and they go on a quest to turn themselves into these supernatural beings. So it's crazy the way that she did this. You are questioning so much, like, who is the good guy? What even is a villain? Who is really a villain? And then, as if this wasn't enough, she gives us Vengeful, where we meet two new characters who are probably my favorite characters of all time. When you meet Marcella, you will never forget her as a character. She's probably one of my favorite female characters in any sci-fi or fantasy book. I can't tell you much about the second book without totally spoiling both books, but I have never gone through a series faster. And I put off reading Vicious for a long time, and I can't believe I did. So if you read nothing else from this video, read the Villain series. Alright, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and found a new book series or couple of book series that you can binge to help keep you focused and distracted and reading as we're all staying home. Links to all of my social media and also every book and series I mentioned in this video will be down below in the description box. And if you haven't already, make sure to thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. I post new videos every single week. I hope you all, again, are healthy and safe and that your loved ones are healthy and safe. And if you are an essential worker, thank you so much for your sacrifice and all you're doing. We really appreciate all of you. Okay, I will see you guys in the next video.
Is this what you want now? Feels like you're looking for something.